don't look at university as a chore and a checkbox, but it's fundamental to help you figure out what that next step is, because otherwise you're just going to be, thinking you know what's good for you, but you don't have the knowledge to really know what's good for you. So that's it.
This week on Hero CXO, Avinash Advani, the CEO of CyberKnight, a technology security distributor in the Middle East. Avinash is a serial entrepreneur and 7-time CEO. His personality is infectious and he's never short of anything to say. If you're a CXO and want to be interviewed on this channel, or perhaps you want to nominate someone else, then please get in touch via LinkedIn, Facebook or Instagram. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Welcome to the show. The reason for inviting you on the show is you fit the criteria of Hero CXO. You're a CEO of CyberKnight. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your company?
Sure. So, I founded CyberKnight in 2019, tail end of November 2019, along with my co-founder Vivek Gupta. And basically, we are a cybersecurity focused customer advisory and value-added distribution company. We're headquartered in Dubai. We've got presence in 8 countries across the Middle East. And essentially what we do is we help enterprise and government customers simplify incident response while achieving compliance. Now, if I were to translate that into simple English, enterprise and government organizations are getting bombarded with cyber attacks constantly through various different attack vectors, and they're being mandated by regulatory compliance. We provide solutions and advisory using a well-known framework called Zero Trust Security to help these organizations to simplify the ability to respond to those attacks, detect, prevent, and remediate, and achieve compliance for the relevant local or international compliance mandates.
A few things. Value-added distribution. Some people may not know what distribution is, right? So who's your customer and how do you make revenue?
Lovely. Great question. So let me break this down, right? It's important to understand the chain. First of all, there are a lot of cybersecurity companies out there. I think the number is somewhere around 7,000 cybersecurity vendors out there that are making some semblance of a cybersecurity product. Now, most of them come from the US or different parts of the world outside the Middle East. Okay, where they're headquartered, they typically sell directly to the customer themselves through a network of partners or through their own sellers. Yep. Here in the Middle East, because the vendors who make the products either have a very lean team on the ground or no team on the ground, they still consider the Middle East a lucrative region to do business, though, because there's a lot of cybersecurity impact and budgets and people spending on cybersecurity. So it's a bit of a dichotomy because the vendors don't have a lot of people on the ground, but there's a big amount of opportunity. So what they do is they scale the Middle East by signing a value-added distribution company. Now, like CyberKnight. Now, what that really means is we become an extension of those vendors on the ground from sales through support. So we help to penetrate the market by creating awareness and evangelizing and educating the customer, the banks, the telecom, the government, the energy companies, basically the end users who buy the security, okay? But we don't sell directly to these customers. We sell through a network of resellers. We call them VARs, or value-added resellers, or systems integrators, okay? They are technically our customer because they're the ones who buy from us. We sell to them, but we're going to the market and creating this education and this awareness with the end user, bringing in the right channel, the right partner to then fulfill that business and help to scale the business. And we in turn will buy from that cybersecurity vendor sitting wherever they are in the world. And that's the chain. End user customer, reseller partner, value-added distributor, the cybersecurity vendor. But our role is really to span all 3 elements of that. So we carry the flag for 30 different cybersecurity global vendors. We represent them in the Middle East and we help them scale their business, maximize market penetration, maximize their ROI, reduce their time to value, and frankly, become an extension of these vendors on the ground in the regions that we cover. Does that make sense?
Cool. That's an excellent answer. I think so. I've had 20 plus years experience in technology, as you know, and specifically cybersecurity over the last 15. I think the term value-add distributor is bandied around, but rarely does it actually exist, right? And I don't want to throw the cat amongst the pigeons, Avinash, right? So a lot of distribution companies are there just to take a bit of margin, just to exploit an opportunity there may be. But the true value-add distribution is a very unique thing. So, 100%. And I know you're doing it, right? I know you're doing it. The reason being is that you actually have a who's who of cybersecurity vendors, right? So your company's not very old, but you have some very, very impressive cybersecurity vendors. So how on earth have you managed to get them on board?
Wonderful. Another great question. So, look, if you look at CyberKnight on paper, yes, you're right. We're a four-year-old company founded in 2019. This is our fourth year, actually, right? And we've come a long way. We've literally gone from zero to $60 million worth of orders in 2022 in a very short period of time. And this year is going to be an even bigger year. And now, to answer your question directly, although CyberKnight is relatively new on paper, right? I and many of my colleagues and team members have been in the industry for a long time, right? I've been in the industry for about 23 years.
You're a legend. I've known you for a long time.
No, I'm not a legend. I'm a normal, individual. But the point is, I've been in the industry for about 23 years now, and over the last 12, 13 years, right, over a decade, I've spent my time building cybersecurity value-added distribution companies. So prior to CyberKnight, I worked at a couple of other cybersecurity VADs, and over this tenure and this experience, I interacted and worked with many cybersecurity vendors out there at each of those organizations, and even vendors who I'd evaluated and spoken to, but we didn't get a chance to work together. And so they'd had the opportunity to observe the concept of true value-added distribution during my tenure at those organizations. And many of them had either remained where they were or had moved on to other organizations. And, it's all about relationships in the end. When you maintain those relationships, you deliver on results, people kind of tend to remember you. And so when I started CyberKnight, I kind of reached out to my network of vendors, and I was privileged and honored that so many of them were willing to take that bet and, jump into bed with CyberKnight right off the bat and say, you know what, we're going to grow with these guys because we believe in their potential. So there was a little bit of, relationship, past experiences, successful encounters in the past combined together. That's how we managed to build out our portfolio so successfully.
Excellent. So look, I want to pick up on one thing. When doing the research on you, Avinash, I checked out the website, checked out your customers and your technologies that you supply. You talk about the art of war on your website, right? Is it Sun Tzu?
Yes.
So how on earth do you translate Chinese war strategy into selling technology software into the Middle East?
Wonderful. So Sun Tzu's Art of War, is really a strategic guidebook for, frankly, any industry, right? It truly applies to how you need to think about strategy when building companies, when going to war, when building business units, channel strategies, customer strategies. When you look at a go-to-market, you can apply Sun Tzu's Art of War to, frankly, any go-to-market, right? Yep. And I've been, an avid believer and reader of the principles for a very long time, and it's something that I kind of, drill into my strategic thinking, regardless of what the project actually is. And so I thought when I founded CyberKnight, it would be very apt to, continue that wavelength and relate Sun Tzu's Art of War principles to how we were going to run this business.
Yeah, I love it. I've actually got a copy of it down there. You can't see it because it's a really thin book, right? And obviously there have been different versions of it.
Exactly, a really thin red one. That's how it comes in original form.
So I was offered it or told to read it as a salesperson many years ago because it does make you think about strategy. It does make you think about things a little bit differently. It does help you think about competition and the effect they have on deals that you may be working with. So actually, I really like it. So look, let's talk a little bit more about your company. So
sure.
Size, how many people? What is the makeup?
So we have just over 50 employees today across 8 countries in the Middle East. We are headquartered in Dubai. And it's a typical value-added distribution organization, and I know that might not mean a lot to people that don't know the business, but we've got sales teams that touch the end user across the region. We have technical teams across the region that support those salespeople.
Yep.
We have a marketing function. We have a channel, a reseller management, a channel function. We have a product management division where the vendors are all managed. We have operations, which includes the typical, admin, HR, logistics, finance. We then also have the post-sales division for organizations that need services after sale. And in essence, that's the makeup. So sales, technical, channel, product management, operations, and marketing. And all of those report up obviously into the management.
Excellent. So I'm interested to understand the organizational structure. So is it a very flat structure? Everyone report to you? Do you have a whole line of managers? What does that look like?
So, we are a very non-bureaucratic environment. We have a limited hierarchy. Everyone doesn't report into me. Does not report into me. We have some structure in place. We've got the executive management team. We have the C-level executives. We've got directors. And then we, have managers and then, kind of the individual contributors. So there are 3 or 4 layers, but it's flat from the perspective of open door policy. There's sort of engagement among all resources. There's a lot of camaraderie, a lot of collaboration. We don't really feel or experience the hierarchy. The hierarchy is there more because of, effective management to be able to drive, the right direction within individual teams, right? So you have marketing leadership and product management, business units and channel leadership and sales leadership within country. So it's more of, structuring to ensure the right direction versus to ensure you've got too many layers. I would say we're flat with structure.
Cool. Just some organizations, the CEO is so high up in his tower, he doesn't see the foot soldiers, right? So just want to make sure you're not.
Yeah, no, definitely not the kind of company that I've wanted to build or want to build. It's, although the CEO has to set the strategy and then ensure it gets executed, I want to make sure that, it's the team that actually delivers on the success, not just the CEO.
Excellent. So I want to touch on. We're going to talk about cybersecurity a little bit later on, but I want to touch on
Sure.
you. I know your story. I've seen interviews and stuff, but I'm really intrigued to understand what maketh the man. Why? How on earth did you end up where you are today? Because Oman, India, US, Middle East, and I'm a massive fan of the film Sliding Doors, right? Whereas these small decisions you make in life can make a massive impact in the direction you go. So can you give me some examples on some of those sliding door moments in your life? That's a very difficult question to answer, by the way. But
No, I can. It's a good one. I consider myself a global citizen because you're right. I'm Indian by heritage. I'm an Indian citizen. I was born in Oman, in Muscat. Lived there for the first third of my life. Went to boarding school in India. And then moved to the States after that, right? And I was in the U.S. for a third of my life before moving to the Middle East. Now, that's just kind of the summary. Now, if I were to backtrack to where it all began. So when I was in my, I was around 8 or 9 years old, computers were starting to become a big thing, Mac and even PCs. And I got intrigued. So one day I was walking around a mall and I looked in the window. I was this little kid, looking at this computer whirring behind the glass. And I was walking with my parents. And I remember thinking to myself, I want one of those. And, back then they weren't very widespread. And so to own a computer was a big thing. And so
what computer was it,
For
Avinash?
a while. What's that?
What model of computer was it?
It was a Mac 2C. That was the first. Okay. That was the first computer I got. So I kind of harped on about it to my parents for a while, and they a little while later they bought me that first computer, and I learned how to use it myself, played around with it completely without any instruction or direction, and obviously back then at the age of 8, it was really video games and just looking at the apps, and there's not a lot you can do with that at that age. But and it was still, I still remember it was a green screen. There was no color in the monitor. And then a year later, the computer was upgraded to the next version of the Mac. And then, I started getting interested in basically the computer itself. So I told my dad one day, listen, I'm getting this pocket money, this weekly pocket money that I'm going to collect over time, and I'm going to build my own computer. And I'm going to go and find the pieces and the components and the chassis, and I'm going to just put it together myself because I want to learn how to do it. So I was probably around 10 at this point in time. So I used to go visit the same computer shop all the time. And there was this one sales guy in there that I definitely got very annoyed with me because I used to go there as a little kid asking all these questions about computer parts and things. But I think he was also a little intrigued by the interest. So over the course of a year, I had saved up enough money to first go buy the CPU, the motherboard, the memory, and I'm not going to go into the technical details, but the battery, the power the unit and the chassis. And it took me about a year in total to gather all the pieces, but I finally did gather all the pieces, and I put together my first computer, and I was probably around 10. And when I turned it on the first time, it didn't work. I had to take it apart and put it back again. But the second time I put it together, it did work. And at that point, I realized, wow, I just put together my own computer and, set up it was a Windows PC. So Windows 3.1.
Yeah.
Maybe it was even 3.0 back then. But, I set it up, installed the software. And again, video games and playing around and just learning how to use the different apps. No specific purpose. Because in school, we weren't even using computers that in a widespread manner. It wasn't prolific back then. So I still remember my dad's, company wanting to have a couple of computers. So I thought, hey, look, listen, I could go out and build a couple of computers for my father's office, right? And so I took.
So you became a hardware manufacturer at the age of 10 or 11, right?
Well, there you go, right? At 10 years old, right? But again, I mean, it was purely based on interest and intrigue more than anything specific. Then, so I put a couple of computers together between the age of 10 and 13. And when I was 13, I went off to boarding school. And at the boarding school I was at, it was like this American boarding school in India on a mountain, 9,000 feet above sea level. And they did take IT and computers very seriously. They had a lot of classes. And so I kind of, went in, grabbed it by the horns and heads down, got into technology, learned to program. And around the age of, I was in high school, it was around maybe 15 or so when the college counselors first met you to say, hey, in a couple of years, you're going to be graduating. You need to think about where you want to go. So I started to, because I'd been programming and I was okay at it. I can't tell you that I was some kind of a programming guru or anything, but I was decent. But it got me, again, interested in the software part of the computing world. I'd gotten my hands wet with the hardware part when I was between 10 and 13. And so I realized, what? I would love to do a degree that allowed me to make use of my understanding of hardware and software. Okay, so I started researching college degrees, and I found a bunch of degrees in electronics engineering that were very hardware geared towards hardware, and then I found another bunch of degrees that were in computer science, which were very software focused. And I tried to find a degree that combined them both. And finally, I identified a few universities that actually had a computer engineering program, right? That was literally a combination of software and hardware. And so, and that's why I chose to go to Purdue University in the States, because they had one of the leading computer engineering programs, one of the best engineering schools in the U.S. And I said, let's give this a shot. So, I graduated from high school, went to the U.S., went to Purdue, and I started being a computer engineer. Now, very quickly, when I got into the program, I realized, okay, so I thought I wanted to be an engineer, but being an engineer is a lot more difficult than people think that it actually is, right? Yep. And look, as I said, I was an above average student. I was good at the hardware, good at the software, but it wasn't something that came to me naturally. Okay, I wasn't naturally talented at programming or building hardware. And so it was a lot of work. And I realized that engineering was super difficult. I had the privilege of also doing a minor in economics at the time. And I found myself being drawn towards the business aspects of life and economics in general at the same time. And so I continued my computer engineering degree. I did a minor in economics as well. And, I graduated from Purdue with those, with a computer engineering bachelor's and a economics minor.
Okay.
But as I'd gone through the program, I realized more and more that engineering is fun, but it's extremely difficult, and it takes a certain type of person to excel at engineering and a certain type of mindset to excel at engineering.
Yep, I agree.
And because I was also inclined to business, I was always kind of thinking outside the box and exploring, should I stay, in this siloed engineering world, or should I look at expanding? But I decided to stick it out. And I got my first internship during a job fair at Purdue at Cisco Systems in California and in the Bay Area. And it was for a software engineer, a programmer, and I went and applied. They invited me for an interview. I got selected, and I began my internship at Cisco in 1999. Actually, while I was still obviously at Purdue, I was in my junior year, so second to last. And the internship was super successful. I had a great time programming these tools for one of Cisco's newest and fastest routing systems. And it was only 3 months, but when I finished the 3 months, Cisco said, "Hey, would you like to continue your internship from university? And your last year, you could work from there as a, let's say, part-time employee, or let's say continuing your internship, and we'd continue paying you, and you'd finish your last year while being an intern." So I said, sure, why not? So it was great because they paid me like a proper salary, like you'd get paid when you work at an internship, versus all my friends that were working, in the kitchens and the restaurants making minimum wage. And it was great for that year because, made a little bit of money, continued working in the internship, graduated from Purdue. And then, Cisco invited me back to as a full-time employee straight after. Now, I'm sharing this all with you because it's real important to the crux of the story. When I got back to Cisco, again, I went back into the same team and I continued that software engineering world. Now, I spent close to 5 years in the role. Really enjoyed it. Learned a lot. Met a lot of people. Grew myself. Learned a lot about the working life. And but all along, I could feel my ambition get the better of me in terms of growth and where I wanted to go, and the direction I wanted to take. And I felt that I was being a little stunted by the corporate ladder, and that I wasn't sure whether the direction that I was taking was appropriate. I tried to consult with my managers and my friends and my mentors and my colleagues, and they could all see that I had the gift of the gab, and I could sell anything. But they because I was in that kind of engineering regime, it was almost off the table to think about anything else other than staying focused on excelling within the engineering organization. But I began thinking about other roles like sales, product management, product marketing, and in the 6th year, I decided, I'm going to move out of the pure engineering and move to a different type of role within Cisco that was adjacent or complementary, called customer advocacy. And I moved into a customer advocacy role where I was a product supportability engineer. Again, kind of engineering, but this time more around business analytics and analyzing support and customer requirements, mapping those to business requirements, taking them back into the business unit, feeding them back into new products. And it was just a lot more exciting for me. And over the course of that year, I realized, I really see myself being more on the business side of the equation, loving technology, wanting to be part of technology, but really, looking at it from a business lens versus the engineering lens. And so in 2005, I encountered a friend of mine that was also in San Francisco working as an IT manager at a bank. And he, ironically, was getting married to a girl from Dubai. And at the time, my parents were living in Dubai. And so we, we're sitting together having dinner one day, and we said, we should go out to Dubai. It's this new land of opportunity and start, something there of our own. I bring the Cisco background, the understanding of the Cisco technology. He brings the kind of business management background. Let's go put this together and do something there. And, at the time, Cisco was one of the and still is one of the leading tech companies out there. They had a brilliant portfolio around innovative technology. So we decided that we were going to, jump ship and move to Dubai and start a Cisco-focused systems integration company, but really focused on key technology areas that others were not yet focusing on in Dubai.
Okay.
We chose voice or voice over IP and security. This was 2006. Yep. We founded a company called Latitude Systems in Dubai, which was, again, a Cisco-focused systems integration company. And we started from scratch. We just, we both saved a little bit of money, I would say, through real estate investments and other things in the States. So we each put in a little bit of money and self-funded this business and bootstrapped to build Latitude Systems. So that's how I came over to Dubai. I've been here ever since. That was 2006. And, Latitude Systems was a great success. Over the course of 3 years, we built the company, into a $4 million business. I then exited the company and moved on to, I'm going to fast forward a little bit here, but I moved on to other startup style vendors in the security and cloud space. Okay. Over the course of the next, from 2006 to 2008, I was at Latitude. From 2008 to 2012, over the course of 5 years, I worked at a couple of startup style cybersecurity and cloud vendors. And then in 2012, I got approached by my distributor that I had signed to help me scale the vendor that I was a part of, to say, hey, look, we love what you've done with this one product, but what do you think about coming and doing this for a portfolio of products? And so I said, well, I've never really done distribution before. But like, well, you know what? Listen, we're going to give you free reign. Come and do it. Come do whatever you like. Reinvent the wheel, change the game of what it means to be a value-added distributor. So I thought about it. And I said, look, I've done the reseller thing. I've done the big vendor thing. I've done the small vendor thing. I've never done distribution. They're giving me an opportunity to come in and, clean sheet, go out and do this yourself. So I thought about doing something innovative and different. I said, if I could take what a vendor does and superimpose it on top of distribution, I can create this new model that I termed true value-added distribution. Okay? And that essentially means adding value to the vendor, value to the partner, and value to the customer at exactly the same time. So I created this model, and the company I joined in 2012 was around $10 million, 10 people. They've been around for about 10 years. They'd kind of been growing slowly. I took this model, and along with, of course, the GM and the managing director there, we implemented this strategy. And if I fast forward 7 years that I was there, the business grew from 10 million to $250 million. We grew from 10 people to almost 300 employees, from a single office in Dubai.
Which company was that, Avinash? Which company?
That was Starlink.
Okay, Starlink. Yeah, that's where I met you. Starlink.
Yeah, exactly. So, the model of true value distribution worked, and we created a legacy of rampant scale, offices around the world, teams that were scaled out, and a beautiful portfolio of cybersecurity products mapped to industry best-of-breed frameworks. And so in 2018, after the building element of Starlink stopped, I'm a builder, right? I like to build organizations. And when when the building element stopped, I decided that it was time for a new adventure. And so I then got called by another boutique cybersecurity value-added distribution company who called me and said, hey, come and do another Starlink for me. And so I thought about it for a while. I was living in the UK at that time, actually, because when I was at Starlink, the last period of the tenure there, I was running the international market. So everything outside of the Middle East, Europe, North America, Turkey, South Africa, et cetera, et cetera. So this other cybersecurity boutique VAD was also based in Dubai. And so they said, hey, look, are you interested in coming back to Dubai and doing it all over again? So I gave it a thought, and they were in exactly that same phase that Starlink were when I joined them. They'd been around for about 10 years. They were under $10 million. They had a decent sized team. They had decent products, but they haven't achieved that scale. So I took I decided, let's go do this all over again. I took the true value added distribution model and I rebranded it. I called it disruptive distribution. And the company was called Spire Solutions. So I again took this disruptive distribution model and scaled it out. In just over a year, we more than doubled the business, scaled out the teams, built out the portfolio. And in 2019, around mid-year, I realized that, this model really works, right? It's a tried and tested recipe for success. I did it at Starlink. I'm doing it at Spire. Why am I making money for other folks when I can go out and do it for myself? And so CyberKnight, the idea of CyberKnight was born on the premise that, we achieve success at, companies, subsequent companies successfully and sequentially, that I said, it's time for me to go out and build this myself. I reached back out to my old colleague, Vivek, who was with me at Starlink. He was the CFO there for a while. And we came together over dinner one day and said, what do you think? We both sparks flew. It was a light bulb moment. And we said, we got to go do this. And, the rest is history. And been at CyberKnight for the last 3-4 years. And it's been a wild ride, but we're just getting started.
That's do you know what? That's incredible, Avinash. I think that's probably the most comprehensive career review I've ever heard, which is impressive. I have a few questions.
I gave you the details because I figured you could use what you want.
I love it. So, in terms of, it sounds like you actually shaped your career yourself in terms of hardware, software, computing, engineering, taking the economics minor, going into, you shaped that yourself. Was there anything in that process which was lucky that you got that break, or lucky that you got that role, or lucky that you made that move that forged where you are today?
I mean, definitely. I mean, supportive parents I know this sounds a bit cliche, but supportive parents to kind of ensure that they're watching for the interests of their kids, and and then capitalizing on that by investing in those interests and making sure, because they saw that I liked computers at the early days, and I managed to get a computer at the age of 8 or 9 years old.
Yep.
A lot of kids didn't have that opportunity back then. So definitely supportive parents. Definitely a school that invests also in innovative next generation concepts. I mean, back then it was early days of computing and programming, but they had an extensive program. So yeah, I mean, picking your education and ensuring that parents are taking interest in their child, in their kids, is in the interest of their children, I think is really, really important. And that those both definitely shape my ability to make these decisions. There is also a bit of, I guess, personality that comes into play, because I'm the kind of guy that likes to figure out direction by myself. I listen to others, I take advice, I take guidance, I take direction, but I'm always going to make the decision on my own. So there's a little bit of personality there as well. But I am a pretty ambitious guy that has been driven to kind of getting to certain life goals myself, and it's a mix of.
When I met you back at Starlink, one of the first things that struck me was this guy could sell ice to the Eskimos. I kid you not, right? Because you're a great negotiator, great communicator. You always have been ever since I've known you. So look, one thing I want to pick up on, right, is not pick up on, but sometimes people don't run their own business or aren't successful because they don't have the stability. And when I mean stability, I mean family stability, financial stability. It sounds like you were lucky enough to have all that. So
absolutely.
Did it make things easier for you, do you think?
I definitely think that having financial and family stability are fundamental drivers to an individual being able to make decisions that shape their own career.
Yep.
Yes, without too much external influence. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I get that. So you mentioned there about advice and taking advice. So who within your industry or what peers do you seek advice from, or who impacts the way you work and what you do?
Great question. So I take advice from a lot of people. I mean, I listen to everyone around me, my colleagues, my peers, my business partners, my resellers, my customers, my vendors. I listen to everybody. But as I said already, I kind of shape my own decisions. My wife, of course, how can I miss her?
Of course.
My parents. I listen to everybody. But I kind of choose to shape my own decisions based on my own ambition. Now, to answer that question slightly differently, you know, I never really had any mentors that I could go to help me shape my decisions because, you know, for example, I was the first one in my family to go into engineering. I was the first one in my
Okay.
family to go into computer engineering, and you know, computers were brand new back then. I was the first one to get into cybersecurity, so I didn't really have anyone within my circle, social or family, that could advise me or help me with those decisions. So I had to kind of
Yep.
figure it out myself. But what I've noticed is that you know, the people in the industry, not just necessarily in cybersecurity, but in IT in general, people that have done really, really well with building companies and businesses. I spent a lot of time following people like Bill Gates, you know, and his journey. I've also spent, and then also non-technical people like Richard Branson, Warren Buffett, and I've been inspired,
Yeah.
you know, Jeff Bezos, and I've been inspired by some key figures in my life that have achieved tremendous success, you know, because they've been ambitious and had great ideas and then executed flawlessly. And so those people still continue to drive my ambition and drive my direction today. But I didn't really have any single individual or sets of individuals that were mentors that helped me to shape my decisions. Today, it's
Okay.
more about listening to, you know, people around me as advice so that I can make the most appropriate decision, for, you know, or identify the most appropriate solution for a given problem.
Okay. So what about instead of mentors or peers? What about literature? Is there any particular? Was there a go-to book that you remember or recall that had some great advice in it? And I'll give you some examples. Right. So down
Crossing the
here.
chasm.
Right. So
I mean, there's,
I mean,
yeah.
I've been in sales for so long that there's so many different sales books you can read. It's if someone says to me, "What sales book should I read, Paul?" It's well, you've got about 10 to choose from. What sort of go-to books for you?
Okay, so the one that I mean, you know, I recommend every single, especially people who are entrepreneurs, right? Crossing the Chasm, right,
Yeah.
is definitely one of the best sales books ever written.
Yeah.
The Innovator's Dilemma, right? And there's some great authors out there, Zig Ziglar. I mean, there's just so many sales books, right? But the one that stands out for me is always the concept of the innovator's dilemma, crossing the chasm. Because if
Yeah.
you understand that, then you know you can truly build companies and understand where in the life cycle you need to be investing and where you need to be patient and market dynamics. And there's just so many things you learn, you know, by understanding the concept of the innovator's dilemma.
Okay, so let's talk about those individuals out there that are listening to this or watching this thinking, I want to be a CEO. Is it a job for everybody, or do you have to be a unique sort of person to do that?
I think everyone can be a CEO if they find their passion, right? And they build the experience and expertise required to build a company that surrounds their passion
Yeah.
and then have the experience to execute against it, right? So
But should
anyone
they?
can.
But should they
Sorry,
get that
go ahead.
experience in the corporate world before then perhaps branching out on their own, or should they actually try and climb the corporate tree? What do you reckon?
I don't think there's a prescribed formula, Paul, to be honest with you, right?
Yeah.
It depends on the person. I mean, there are some people that need to learn you know, the tips, the tools, the techniques and the processes of the trade, right? Or
Yeah.
TTPs or whatever. And some who just kind of have an innate ability to be great leaders and build this experience on the fly. So it's personality and character driven and experience driven and background driven. There's so many factors that contribute to one's ability to be a natural CEO or not. Now, you know, being a CEO is about mastering leadership, being able to inspire others, but it's
Yeah.
also about being you know when you need to be an expert, a specialist in something or an expert in something, so you're recognized as, you know, someone that has the potential to succeed in that given
Yeah.
field. Anyone can start a company today and say, "Oh, I'm the CEO of this company," but for that company to be successful, the company needs to be recognized as an expert or as a specialist in what they do, and that's typically what experience builds. right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who are natural leaders, but they may not have that experience yet to build a company because they don't have that reputation as an expert or a specialist in that field. And then there are others who've got 20, 30 years of experience being a specialist, but don't have that natural leadership capability. They're more technical. So it's really about a balance between having that ability to inspire and lead, but also having the experience that makes you a specialist or an expert in what you do, because combining those together is what makes the success of a company.
So there was a key word you kept coming out with there, which was leadership. Now, I'm not going to answer the question. I'm going to ask you the question. Can anyone be a leader?
Can anyone be a leader? No, hold on. So can anyone be a leader? Yes. But can anyone be a leader of a company? No. Okay.
Great.
So I
Yep.
think that, leadership exists in so many different forms. You can be a team lead. You can be a manager. You can be a director. You can be a VP. You can be a C-level executive like a CEO. But each of them have a different element of leadership. And then, building a company that you then need to lead and ensure that you're managing the P&L and ensuring the success of, the organization and all its employees, that's a whole different type of leadership. So I think everyone can develop leadership skills. Can everyone take on the role of a leader of an organization? I believe it really depends on whether they have that innate ability to inspire others and
Yeah.
drive them to achieve the company's goals.
I think inspiring others is really important. I don't think everyone can make a good leader. I think there are so many
I
different
agree.
facets of being a good leader.
Leading and inspiring are two different things.
Yeah, agreed. So, what do you love about your job?
What do I love about my job? So,
You know what question's coming next, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
So, okay. So let me answer this question in a bit of a sideways manner. Okay. First of all, when I come to work every day, whatever time I start and whatever time I finish, I don't believe I'm going to work. It's not a job for me.
Okay.
My work is embedded into my life. So what I do at CyberKnight and my job, my role as a CEO is living. It's not actually going to work. And I know this sounds, again, a bit cheesy, right? And I do have a work-life balance, I promise you. But
Yeah.
for me, because I'm so passionate about the company, CyberKnight, about cybersecurity, about what we're building, I don't really look at it as a job. I just look at it as part of living and it's part of my life. And so, there's not really a clear distinction between going to work and just living my life. That's the first point. Second point,
Okay.
What do I love about my job? Okay, I am passionate about cybersecurity, and I'm passionate about maximizing value to my customers, to the stakeholders that I represent. And it is these two things that get me excited. Okay. I'm constantly trying to keep my finger on the pulse of the industry of cybersecurity because I think it is just a very exciting space to be in. We're always trying to play catch up to the attackers. There's a lot of regulatory compliance coming up for data privacy and other type of frameworks that you're constantly playing catch up to the industry and to the attackers. And so being ahead of the curve enables you to achieve success, right? And so one part is just being really passionate about the industry itself and keeping my finger on the pulse of the innovation that exists in the industry.
Yep.
The second part of it is the value maximization proposition. So with this business that I'm in with CyberKnight and running the show here, I have the ability to every day come up with new strategies that enables us to maximize value to shareholders, employees, vendors, partners, and customers. And everything we do, every single strategy and every decision we take is related in some way to maximizing value. And when you feel that every decision you take directly impacts the value you're offering someone else, it's a really good feeling.
So, great answers, right? So, I was going to ask you what you don't like about your job, but I think you'll say nothing, right? But so I'm going to spin that a
No,
little bit.
actually, look, listen. No,
I'm going to
there's no
spin
such
it.
thing. You can't say. Go ahead. Sorry, Paul.
No, my question was, as a leader, you have to make difficult decisions sometimes, right? Especially when it comes to personnel decisions. How do you handle that? Are you any good at that? Are you the tough
You
guy?
have
Are
just
you
answered the previous question for me by
okay?
asking me this question. The one thing that I detest about my job is having to tell someone, that they can no longer continue working for the company,
Yeah.
right? Having to let someone go is by far the hardest thing that any leader has to do, and yeah, same here.
So, any questions you want to ask me? With 5 minutes to go.
Um, I would
You
love
don't
to
have
understand what is the criteria for you to pick the people that you want to interview.
good question. So, like you, I'm very fortunate to have travelled, worked for some great companies, had some really good roles, and still do. So I'm quite privileged where I can actually have a field of people where I can say, "Do you know, you'd be great for the show. You'd be great for that." So, and also because of where I live in the UK, I'm in the commuter belt to London. McLaren is just around the corner. There are CISOs
Nice.
I've met and have relationships with, so I can pull on some really good people. For me, they have to be an interesting character, right? They have to have a story to tell, and it's really important for me to try and dig into the individual because I've learned a lot about you, and obviously we've met before, and I think that your story is really interesting because you've shaped your own destiny. You really have. It's not something where you were a bit lucky there, a bit lucky there. So for me, for example, I was an engineer for IBM for 5 years. I've been techie forever. I fell into an SE role, a pre-sales role, which then got me into sales. So that was pure luck. So my sliding door moment was when the end of my career at IBM. Whereas with you, it's the passion, it's the enthusiasm, it's the communication skills. That's why I invited you on the show, Avinash. That's why.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate all the kind words, and it's been a pleasure to be here. And I don't have any further questions, Paul.
No, that's cool. So, who would you like to see on the show? Who should I go and target for you? Bear in mind, you can't say Bill Gates because there's no way I'll get him on
What's
the
my
show.
what's my geographical boundaries? I mean, how far are you looking to
Oh,
go?
anywhere.
From
I'll speak to anybody.
anywhere in the world?
Yep.
I would say that the Web3 space is really interesting, as well
Okay.
as the esports space. I mean, these are two industries which I don't know too much about, but they're buzzing, right? I'm not saying fintech specifically, but Web3. There's a lot
Yep.
of buzz around metaverse and fintech and various different sub industries, but the Web3 world overall, and then the esports world and the gaming world, both are buzzing a lot. So I would say, a interesting CXO from either of the two would be
Okay. I know someone in
very
esports,
prospect.
so you've made that really easy for me, so I can do that. That's fine. One question I
There you
wanted to
go.
ask you,
There you go.
right, which is
Yeah.
which is one question, which is blockchain. Explain.
Okay. So in a very
Imagine you
short,
imagine you tell him imagine you telling my mum and dad who have no idea of technology in any way. So what does blockchain mean?
it's very simple. Okay. So if you think about it in the context of financial transactions, to make it very easy. Okay. Now it can be applied to multiple industries. Today, when you send money from one person to another or one entity to another, there is an entity in between. That entity is a bank or a central bank, right? So when you
Yep.
send a transfer from A to B, it's going to your bank, through the central bank, to another bank, and then to the entity, right? And there are sort of these central entities that are governing and controlling the transaction itself, the price and the timelines and the ability to send or not. Blockchain, in essence, removes this central governing entities entirely and enables entity A and entity B to communicate directly using a public, um, non-repudiate, basically non-governed set of links that enable entity A to send, let's say, money to entity B directly without requiring any central governance. This is one way to look at blockchain, and I'm going to stop there because otherwise I'll go down a different rabbit hole. But that is one way to look at it. You take out the central governance.
You explained it better than me, Avinash. You explained it better than me.
There's a lot more benefits to blockchain and many other ways to look at it, like the ledger and all that good stuff. But then that would take me down a technical rabbit hole.
Avinash, what's your best one-liner, analogy, whatever it may be, piece of advice? What would it be?
So here's my issue. I've got two, and I've got to give you both, right?
Yeah, okay, go on then. Let's have both.
Without planning, plan to fail. That's one.
Okay.
Two,
good.
Nothing good in life comes easy.
I think we're done. So I want to thank you for coming on the show today. I think it's been enlightening. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's very insightful, some of the stuff you've come out with. And I think it'll be of value to the people watching. So, Avinash, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
It's been my absolute pleasure. And I thank you again for hosting me. And, have a good day.
If you're a CXO and want to be interviewed on this channel, or perhaps you want to nominate someone else, then please get in touch via LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram.